Hi everyone, and welcome to the Fishhead Creations podcast, where I pull out one of my interesting knitting projects every time and talk you through the details. As always, welcome to any new viewers, and thank you for checking out my podcast, and of course, welcome back to all my returning viewers. Those few of you, I really appreciate you coming back every time. I hope it's interesting every time and you get something out of the time you spend on watching this remedy, whatever it is. I really enjoy doing this, and I really enjoy talking about what I'm doing and what I'm knitting on, so I hope you do, and you also learn something. Today's project again is a design of my own, which I'm hoping to write up at some point. I did take quite good notes when I was knitting on it, so yeah, I'm happy with it. I call this my Rapunzel jumper because for some reason, as soon as I started even planning this, one song by a German band called Rapunzel was stuck in my head, and it's a pretty brutal song about mutilating Rapunzel whenever she comes down from her tower. It's not a nice song, but it was stuck in my head, and for some reason I associated it with the main cable in here, so that's what I call it. There's obviously a lot of pattern out there that are connected to Rapunzel in one way or another, so if I ever publish this, it will most likely be called At Rapunzel's Window, because I imagine her standing at the window of a grey stone tower and looking out, and her braid dangling down the wall. Yeah, that's in the name, but let's get to the knitting, shall we? So this is again, as last week's project, knit in Clinter Nordy, the 2-ply sport weight base. So it has around 300 something meters per 100 grams. It's a non-superwash wool, Lithuanian wool and German merino, as far as I know. I have some kind of fluff or cat hair stuck in my nose. I'm sorry. Everything's covered in cat hair here. So, where was I? Yeah, it's Lithuanian wool and German merino, as far as I know. I don't know the percentages, but it's quite a rustic, toothy wool, but it's also really, I don't know, it feels softer and smoother than other 2-ply rustic yarns. So I do really enjoy it. I especially enjoy it at this gauge, which again is a 24 stitch per 10 centimeter gauge, which I usually get when I'm using a 3mm needle, so that's what I did. So yeah, you know my gauge randomness. I just choose a needle size that has worked previously and hope for the best. In this case it did. As you can see, it's a raglan. It's knit bottom up. It started with 16 centimeters of rib. It's 1x1 rib. I don't know, somewhere around 220 stitches and 16 centimeters of ribbing. It did take a while. So what I did was calculate the stitch count for the ribbing based on my waist circumference, because I wanted it to be slightly cropped. You can see it's a lot shorter than most of my other garments. I wanted it somewhat cropped, so this upper end of the ribbing sits at my natural waist, and the bottom hits just above where my jeans sit usually, and I mainly knit this to be worn over a dress, and I actually bought a dress to go with it, so be proud of me. I knit my jumper to force myself to wear dresses, and I did so. I don't wear it often, but mainly because I finished it at the end of spring, and then it just was too warm to wear a long sleeve dress with a wool jumper over it. So I haven't worn it a ton, but it does actually work over jeans as well, and I'm quite happy with the fit. Yeah, it's a bottom up raglan. The ribbing sits quite tightly at my waist, and then I didn't do any decreases for the waist shaping, just increases for the bust shaping. If I hold it up like this, you can see it goes out quite a bit. I'm not sure how often I increased, but quite rapidly actually, because what I did was just take my waist measurement and calculate the stitch count based on that, and then take my bust measurement and calculate the stitch count I needed at the underarms based on that. And then I just divided the, I think, 20 centimeters of body length that I had by these increases that I needed to do to get from my initial stitch count to the final one, and just, yeah, increased quite rapidly every 8 rows or so, 7-8 rows, because there's quite a bit of difference between my waist and bust measurement, so I had a few centimeters to cover when I was increasing that. The same I did for the sleeves. I started with 60 stitches and won my run rib for, again, around 15-16 centimeters. In this case I did count because I didn't want to match what I did on the second sleeve, and it's 60 rows. And yes, even on only 60 stitches, 60 rows of 1 by 1 rib take forever. I was glad to be done with it, but I love how this fits. I love the very long cuffs, how tightly they sit on my wrist, how easy it is to fold them up at any length, because I can just fold them over in the rib section wherever I want. So just cuff them slightly or cuff them way further up, and it always looks quite nice. And because it's so stretchy in the ribbing, it doesn't bother me at all. So yeah, I'm really happy with it, but it did take forever. So then I only had about 30 centimeters to get to my final stitch count up here, which is 88 stitches, just because I have really wide upper arms compared to my bust measurement, so I do need quite a big difference between my wrists, which are rather narrow, and my upper arms. So again, I took my initial stitch count of 60 stitches, I took my final stitch count of 88 stitches, I knew I had to increase 28 stitches, which means 14 increased rows, and then I just divided the remaining roughly 30 centimeters I had by that, and increased about every 2 centimeters. So yeah, that's what I did on both sleeves, obviously. And for some reason, you would expect the cable to draw up the front, yeah? Well, it comes further down in the back, now that it's been worn and washed and blocked several times, and I have no idea why. I'm constantly pulling the back down. It's the same length. There are no cables to draw it up, and still the front comes further down. I have no idea what it's doing, but, well, you don't notice when I'm wearing it, so not too bad. And then in the body, obviously, after the ribbing, I started this center panel, which I think is about 42 stitches wide, but I'm not sure. These are just small braided cables, which from the bottom up are looking quite funnily, because the braid is obviously running from the top down. But I like it. I like how delicate and swirly they are. And I think they really nicely frame the central cable panel. So these are just 2 by 2 cables coming from the outside in every other row. So each side is cabled every 4 rows, but on every other row a cable is happening, so you get the braided effect. It's 6 stitches wide overall, but it's only 2 by 2 cables, so whenever one side is cabled, the other 2 remaining stitches are not cabled, obviously. Just a simple basic braided cable. And then this center panel is pretty much where the design all started, because I found this cable on knittingfool.com, which is an online stitch dictionary, which probably many or all of you know about, and there's a lot of the Barbara Walker stitch dictionary stitches offered on knittingfool.com. And this cable, I'm not sure where it originally comes from, but it's called the Jensen's Braid, and I found this cable when I was starting to look around for what I wanted to do with this, and I really liked it. What I really like about this central cable is that it has 2 layers of cable action. So you can see these 2 front lines crossing each other, and then the 2 lines in the back are doing the exact same thing, but they never come to the front, so they are basically behind the upper layer, and I really like the 3-dimensional effect you get from that. So yeah, I established this cable as soon as I had reached the end of my ribbing, obviously, and just kept doing what I was doing up to the neckline. It was an easy cable to memorize actually after 1 or 2 repeats, so not too much to think about in this. Then for the raglan decreases, you can see now that it's lying flat that it's bunching a little bit here, and that's a common problem in raglan jumpers, raglan construction in general, that you get an excess of fabric just at the underarm because it's not going in quickly enough, and so the movement of the arm just bulges some fabric out. And I wanted to slightly prevent that by so usually in a raglan you will decrease on all 4 points around on every other row in just the simplest, most basic raglan shape. What I did in the beginning for a few rows was decrease on every other row on the stitches belonging to the arms, but on every row on the stitches belonging to the front and back. So it would go in slightly farther or slightly more quickly initially before then going up on a slope. And it does fit a lot better than other raglans do, so I think I'm on the right track there with it. Yeah, we shall see. And just to make this raglan line a decorative element, I kept the 2 center stitches as knit stitches and then 1 purl stitch on either side, and then outside of this 4 stitch column I have my decrease lines. So with the purl stitches it just makes it slightly more decorative and intentional that you get a line here than it can sometimes look in a raglan. So yeah, what did I do then? You can see here that I did do some short rows in the back, so there are a few more decreases on the back than on the front, and a few more. Well, I started knitting flat at some point and doing short rows, so it would sit slightly higher up in the back. And I did decrease down to very few remaining sleeve stitches, as you hopefully can see here. And I did want a quite close fitting neck, and I initially had planned for this to be a turtleneck because I just loved wearing turtlenecks, and because it's a close fitting neckline already, and because I had so much ribbing at the bottom, I thought it would look quite nice to have a high rib turtleneck, but in the end I just couldn't be bothered to knit any more rib on this thing, and I think it's about 8 or 10 rows that I did in the end, and I do quite like how it looks, so it's fine. I'm actually not completely happy with the neckline, so I'm still thinking about maybe redoing it and turning it into a turtleneck, because as raglan jumpers tend to do, this is a rectangle, not a round neckline in the end, because you decrease from 4 points, and if you lay them flat, if you start a raglan from the top down and lay it flat, it will become a rectangle because of those 4 lines going away from the center. And this does the same thing, which means it can stand out in weird angles sometimes. I think I should have continued to decrease in the ribbing as well to make it lie more flat. As you can see, if I pull it flat this way, it doesn't really work, and for it to lay flat I would need to fold away a bit of the fabric in the front. So I think because of the short rows on the back, I actually made this rectangular shape more apparent, and that's why it flares at the front. So at the top end of the front decreases, the neckline flares out, because I didn't continue to decrease, but I did continue to decrease in the back for the short rows. But because it's a winter garment and I wear it over a long sleeve worn dress, I do usually wear a shawl or scarf with it as well, so I'm not too bothered by an imperfect neckline. But I think if I were to write it up as a design, I would probably continue the decreases into the neckline in some way, just to avoid this and to make it lay more flatly around the neck, or actually turn it into the turtleneck that I was originally going for. But excuse me, I'm still completely tired after the last few weeks, and On the one hand, I just want to sleep all day, and on the other, my insomnia is acting up and I cannot sleep, so I'm sorry, I'm tired. Which also affects my ability to speak coherent sentences in English, apparently, so I'm so sorry if it's hard to follow this week. But yeah. Pretty much the neckline is my only issue with this. I'm really, really happy with the fit of everything else about it. And I'm still contemplating, because it's such a fitting jumper, I'm not sure how I want to write it up. I might just do a few standard sizes, but what I actually really want to do is to create some kind of website where you can enter your own measurements for the relevant parts. That is bust measurement, yoke depth, waist measurement, distance between waist and underarms, wrist circumference and upper arm circumference. And those are the measurements really relevant for the construction. So if you have a large bust, you don't automatically need a deeper yoke. So you would have to decrease more rapidly in order to avoid a yoke that is too deep. Come here, Muzzy. Good. So if you could calculate it based on your actual measurements, it would give you a much better fitting garment. So I really need to sit down with my tech-savvy boyfriend to figure out how we can do a website that does the actual calculations. So I would then just go ahead and write the pattern in a way that says, well, it has just random letters where you need to insert your own measurements, and then the cat's waking up. The intervals in which you would have to do something, you can then take from this web page based on your own measurements. I think that would be really nice to get a size-inclusive, well-fitting garment for everyone. But I have not thought through the details of how to actually do this. So I might just start out by writing up a few standard sizes and offering detailed instructions on how to change those basic sizes according to your own measurements. I need to sit down and think it through, but I really want to write it up because it's such a nice, wearable, simple, fitted garment that fits into pretty much everyone's wardrobe and will look good in pretty much every yarn and color. I can also imagine this in a variegated, hand-dyed, as long as it's not too crazily colorful and drowns the cables. I think every yarn will work for this. So yeah, this is Rapunzel, or At Rapunzel's Window, and I do like it. I do need to fix the neckline issues, but yeah, I'm happy with it. Just a standard fitted grey thing. So the cats have woken up and are actually quite right next to me, so yeah, come here. We have a co-host again today. Solveig does not actually like me very much, so I usually cannot convince her to be anywhere near me. Come. But apparently, today she has a cuddly day and wants to be near me. Yes, she's purring. She actually enjoys it. She might not look that way, but she does enjoy being the center of everyone's attention. So give her a shout out. And now that we have some random parts of cats running around in the video and blocking the camera, I think I call it a day for today. Thank you. Where's Loki? Where's he? I call it a day for today. Loki is right next to me, next to the sofa, but he doesn't want to come here. I wanted him to appear as well, but he doesn't want to. I'm sorry. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode and maybe took away something regarding garment constructions and fit issues and raglans. Please let me know if you have encountered similar issues as I have in this? How did you fix them? How did you deal with the too deep yoke? How did you deal with the square neckline? I would really like to hear to improve on this jumper, and I just really like to engage in conversation, and please feel free to leave a comment below. I try to reply to every comment if there's a question, and just to be present on there. I'm sorry, I'm starting to depill my garment. Yeah, you can also pop over to the Ravelry group. I'm Obsti on Ravelry, and there's a Ravelry group for the Fishhead Creations podcast as well, which I will link to in the description box. You can also find me on Instagram as Caledoniana, and wherever you would like to get in touch and get talking, I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next week. Bye!